Oculus is a horror film from 2014, and it is Michael Flanagan's first wide theatrical release film. This is our series where we do a deep dive on directors, actors, movie franchises, and for this first season, we are doing a deep dive on the director Mike Flanagan and everything he has directed in movies and TV. We already talked about his first film, Absentia, in our last video, and today we'll be talking about Oculus. Alex, I think we have to start off this video by acknowledging that it's hilarious that this movie was produced by WWE Studios.
I've seen this movie years ago, and then putting it back on, I see that WWE logo popped up. I'm like, ah! I'm like, oh no.
Yes, and I always forget about that too. And when I was watching, so I watched this movie the first time a couple of years ago, not when it first came out, but I had seen it before, rewatched it for this, and learned a lot more, obviously, now that I know a little bit more about Mike Flanagan. But I thought it was funny, it's WWE Studios, and then also in one of the opening scenes where they're doing the auction of the mirror, the auctioneer, who is actually Courtney Bell, who from Absentia, and is also the mother of one of his children. I don't know if they were still dating yet at this time, but she says that it was recovered from the Levesque estate, Levesque being Triple H's shoot last name.
Our next item for bid is a gorgeous antique mirror recovered from the Levesque estate. The lesser glass.
But I did see conflicting reports online because some people were saying that was a direct reference. Other people were saying WWE Studios didn't even get involved until after this movie had premiered at film festivals. So it might just be a coincidence.
They just produce it or fund it. Or
Fund
like
it, yeah,
help.
give it some money, distribute it.
Yeah.
So it might just be a funny coincidence. And that does lead me to another annoying point, though, about movies. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. When you Google a movie or you look it up on Letterboxd or whatever you use, the year it shows always goes off of its initial premiere. So like this, for example, released in theaters April of 2014, but it premiered at whatever festival the year before. So if you look up Oculus, it says it's from 2013.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I saw it 2013 and 14. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't care when a movie gets shown on one screen in front of 15 people at some festival. Like, when is it releasing? You know what I mean? That's something that's always annoyed me.
Yeah, that's a good point. When is the wide release?
Exactly. Just a little pet peeve.
Yeah.
But this movie stars Karen Gillan, more famously known now from being Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy, as well as her roles in the Jumanji movies. This was actually her first American role, where she plays Kaylee. She was actually, I guess, known for Doctor Who before this. We've never seen Doctor Who, so I didn't know that, but that's actually how Mike Flanagan knew her and wanted her in the movie, was knowing her from Doctor Who.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, might be the weakest point of the movie for me. This was her first American role. She doesn't do quite a great job at an American accent, in my opinion.
I'm not saying he wasn't seduced. It's a matter of what seduced him.
But she improved pretty quickly because the next year Guardians came out and she was excellent as Nebula. So I'm a big fan of her now, but yeah, she seems to be the bit of a weak point in the movie for me. Let's not get too much into the negatives first, but what did you think? Did you recognize Karen Gillan when you saw her in the movie?
I recognized her, but more importantly, I recognized Katie Sackhoff from live-action Bo-Katan and The Mandalorian. I didn't even remember that she was in this. I'm like, holy crap! Yeah, I mean, same with her. I feel like every performance in this is almost one note, a little bit. Like I feel like no one is that multi-layered. I feel like the best performance actually is Katie Sackhoff as the mother.
Are you gonna do something about the damn barking? There's something wrong with the dog, Alan. He bit me.
She was very believable. Like the dad is kind of just the entire time. Adult Tim, despite being in a mental hospital since he was 10, he has a pretty good tan. While Kaylee, having her freedom, is very pale. I mean, she's a redhead, but that was a little thing I thought was funny. I remember seeing this years ago, but on the rewatch, I didn't really care that much for it. There was some Flanagan stuff that I recognized and liked, his tropes, but I don't know. It didn't hit the same. You know what I mean?
We talked about in our last video when we covered Absentia how it felt so authentic and like just a bunch of people wanting to make a movie. I know Mike Flanagan is passionate about this story because it's based off of his own short film from 2006.
Yeah.
So I know that this isn't like a studio just gave him a movie to make, but at the same time, out of all of his stuff I've seen, this feels the most like artificial, or it seems the most like studio movie, which it wasn't that high budget of a movie. It's not a known property. It's not known really actors for the most part at the time. So that came off as a little bit surprising to me, that it feels this way. But yeah, both times I've watched it, it just doesn't feel that Flanagan-esque, although there still are the little things in there we'll talk about. I do enjoy the movie, but I get pretty lost. Both times I've watched it, the second half of the movie, I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on. Like, it just feels like a dream or a nightmare, for the last half.
Yeah, and he has one trope that he liked that he adapted in The Haunting of Hill House is the combination of the younger and older actors of the same characters, where they're like intertwining in the same scene and like interacting. I thought all that stuff was very neat, and he loves those glowing eyes. That Mike Flanagan, he loves that glowing eyes. This movie almost felt like a reimagination of The Shining a little bit, with the dad going nuts. And The Shining has a big mirror complex. A lot of characters like look into the mirror. So I felt like there's a little, similarity there.
After making his short, over the years, he was offered several times to make this movie in a found footage horror style, and he said no.
Everybody saw the cameras in the room and would say, oh great, then it's a found footage movie. And kind of for years, we would take it out and get people real excited. People love the short, and they'd be like, great, so we'll just do it as a found footage movie, and that'll be that. And I was like, no, that's not going to work for this story. Because we really wanted it, this idea of distorted reality and subjective and unreliable, narrators. We really wanted that to be in there. And the minute you go found footage, everything's inherently objective. You can't question what's in the frame.
Which again would lead me to believe like this is something he was passionate about, but then why does it come off not that way? It just like seems really weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, did they force him to put some found footage stuff in there? Because like all the cameras that Karen Gillian set up, it's like over this camera, and all the timers.
No, all that is from the short.
Oh, that's from the short?
That's probably my favorite part of the movie, too, is once she gets the brother and they're in the room sitting up on the cameras and she's going over the history of the mirror, and all the people that it's killed.
Similar to Absentia.
Similar to Absentia, yes. And everything in that room is like my favorite part. It's when they get into the other stuff where it gets really messy for me. You brought up The Shining. I got more of like an Amityville horror vibe from like this, the dad.
Yeah.
But also a lot of it felt like similar to Hill House, his eventual adaptation of like the mother character and like things being illusions are different for different people in this house.
Yeah.
It's almost like he had to make this worse version of Hill House in order to eventually make Hill House really good.
yeah, he had to work it out, yeah.
Yeah, and in many ways it feels like this movie is what would happen if you took Hill House and crammed it into an hour and a half.
That's a good point.
Like, not as much characterization, not as much detail. There's stories in this movie that you could tell, like, just need fleshed out, like everything with the dog, everything with Kate Siegel's character, his now wife, who's in the movie as Marisol, a former victim of the mirror. There's a whole bunch of stuff there we should have seen more of. It just seems like it was condensed. Maybe this would have been better, and maybe that's why Flanagan eventually switched over to making series primarily.
Yeah,
because he just needs more time.
Can you imagine Midnight Mass as an hour and a half long movie? Oh
No.
my God, dude. Do you notice that the kid who plays young Tim also plays young Josh from Insidious 2?
Yeah, the kids are fine.
Yeah, where are those kids now? I don't know.
Well, Annalee is also in his next movie, Ouija: Origin of Evil, that we're going to talk about.
Oh, she's the older sister in that,
Yeah,
isn't she? Okay,
so she's
right.
also in that.
That's right.
But and then the older version of the brother is Brenton Thwaites, who plays Tim, who I know from the film adaptation of The Giver, which by all means is not a good movie, but I personally love. So I give him a pass in anything he's in because I love The Giver.
I feel so bad for Tim's character. Like, he's 10 years old, mental asylum till he's 21. Sister gets off, scot-free almost. She's the one who needs, she does need help. I mean, they both needed help. And, he's finally ready to move on with his life, and his sister's like, remember our promise?
As soon as he gets out.
As soon as he gets out.
The moment in the beginning when they're in the diner eating and everything's, cool, and then she just goes, I found it. And he, the look on his face is instant, oh, no, he was over this.
Oh, God. And we'll get into spoilers, but it's this poor guy.
I would recommend this movie, even though I clearly have problems with it. When you compare it to, it's in the horror genre from 2014. I feel like all horror movies back then were either really good or really bad. This is one of the rare ones where it's just in the middle. I don't love it, but it's still solid, and there's some good stuff in it, and it's an original story about this haunted mirror. It's there's got to be a haunted movie for everything, right? This is the haunted mirror movie. So while it gets a little bit too much into the weeds, and I almost would have preferred it to be a little bit more mainstream and a little bit less Michael Flanagan thinky character, because in this one he really tries, it just doesn't really hit as much. It would have been cool to just see a crazy haunted mirror movie, but I still would recommend it.
Yeah, I recommend it too. Mainly, especially just as a filmmaker study, just seeing how this guy, in different forms of movies, media, whatever, and throughout the years, how he improves, what he used to do, what he still does. That's just neat to see.
One thing that Flanagan is consistent with in this movie is still the scares are very effective, not jump scares for the most part. The scene when she's collecting the mirror towards the beginning and there's the statues in the back with the sheets on them, and she'll look and there's 2 of them, then she looks in the mirror and there's 3 of them. No jump scare at all. Scene is 100% effective. That's
Yeah, slowly we're going up to him, and it's like you're just waiting for it to peel. It's like, just pull it back already. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like just making us wait.
You're all set. You all right?
I understand he's been away for a while, but being his sister, like a real sister in this story, she doesn't come off as very like giving a shit about his feelings at all. Like she's very much like, I'm so happy you're home. All right, so I got this mirror. We're gonna go. You know, and
Yeah.
it's instantly like,
Remember that thing that ruined our life?
You promised.
I was 10 years old.
and for the first act of the movie, similar to Absentia, I liked how there was that back and forth of, wait, who's crazy here? Like, is she actually crazy and making all this stuff up? Because he brings up solid points about how your memory works and how it collects false information for a narrative once you believe something and all these things where you really start to believe the brother.
And we see clips of the possible of what it could be.
Yeah, just
Same
like
thing.
an Absentia.
Yeah.
He was having an affair, Saint that he was. It was a bad marriage. Look how it ended up.
No.
Probably the best reveal of the movie is that scene where they're arguing, they leave the room, and then he finally convinces Kaylee that, like, no, this isn't real, you're just crazy, and then she actually seems to start to believe it and starts crying, and they're like, okay, we can leave, go get the stuff, and when they go back in, that's when they see all the cameras pointed at themselves and the plant's dead.
And they see the footage of them like arguing and putting the cameras next, to each other. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Look how it ended up. Our father was a cheater and it drove our mother crazy. He snapped and he killed her. It was going to do the same to us.
Yeah, and I love the little moment. This actually was probably one of the only moments in the movie where the 2 adult versions I believed would be siblings. Or right after that happens, because he's been trying to convince her this whole time she's wrong. Now she has the proof she isn't. And then just go back to what she's doing. I'm like, that's such a true sibling thing to do.
I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. It's just like, after all that, where you're seeing this, where it's like they go outside of the house, and then somehow like he ends up back inside. When it leads to the ending where he does the pendulum, it's like, why would you do that? Like, why? You know what this thing can do now. Why would you release dropping that thing? And of course, it's right when
She's there. It felt to me, like I said, it felt like the whole second half of the movie was a dream or a nightmare. It feels like, when you're in a dream, you don't really control your actions. Like, you do, but it's kind of like, you wake up and you're like, that was weird. That's how I kind of feel about the whole second half of the movie, where it's like, you're so incoherent to where you are and what's going on, that it's like his mind was just like, oh, I'm going to break this mirror. Like that.
Yeah.
They had no shot. Like, they had no chance of ever beating this thing. Like, it's OP as hell for being a mirror.
Yeah, there's a couple of horror movies I've seen where there's like no chance. Some like a Grave Encounters, or movies where like they're trapped inside. It's like they're not getting out. It's like it kind of felt like not as good, but it felt like that. Like Grave Encounters is a good one where like the dread of like they're not getting out like really hits with you.
So this was one thing that was improved. The first time I watched this movie, I was like, okay, realistically, if you wanted to destroy this mirror, like, put a camera in the room with it, be at a remote location, do an explosion, like, you could figure it out, right? But then watching it the second time, I forgot about the scene where the kids actually go to break the mirror with the golf clubs, and then when it shows them, like, they're not even hitting the mirror, I'm like, oh no, it literally won't break. Like, it literally will not let you break it. I thought
they're hitting the walls next to it.
Yeah, I thought it was more of like a psychological thing, but no, it literally will not let you break it. I'm like, okay, that's more of an explanation. And I love the scene at the beginning where she's like, go ahead and break it. And then he like talks himself out of even trying to do it. And it's like, no, you didn't talk yourself out of it. The mirror did.
This poor kid.
Yeah, so you brought up how she dies. Were you shocked by it? Well, first of all, I don't know if I asked you, was this your first time watching it?
No, I saw it a few years ago.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when the first time you saw it, were you shocked by that? Because I was a little bit.
I don't know. I can't remember. We've been set up. It's like nothing goes the way it's supposed to. And when this guy's going to drop it, I think it's intercutting with like
Her hugging her mom.
her hugging her mom in the mirror. So I think I kind of knew it was like, oh God, it's coming. And they take the kid to jail like they did when he was 10. It's like, and none of it was his fault. He was free. He should have just been able to move on, but no.
She brought him back in.
Sister brings him in to kill him.
Yeah, and I loved, as much as, you know, the characters didn't really, like, whatever, I didn't necessarily care about any of the characters. I love that ending of splicing back and forth, the 2 arrest scenes.
It was a mirror! Please, you have to believe me! It was a mirror! It was a mirror!
To the cops, they're just like, oh, same crazy person.
Yeah.
You know?
Is that the message? Like, people don't change. You can't escape your... I don't know. And then it cuts to all the ghosts inside looking out. You know, similar... Yeah. I think Hill House does something similar.
And it shows him as the kid, and he sees his parents, and then it shows him as the adult, and now he sees his sister in there too. And it's like, no one escapes the mirror. Like, I feel like the message is just, don't mess with this mirror. Like,
yeah.
That's it.
And that kind of reminds me of Dr. Sleep a little bit, because all the ghosts inside the hotel, you know, it's like, never escape.